This owner said they were looking for a domain name and a brand that was super simple and easy to remember, and they acquired it. Hey, Chris Zuiker with Media Options. We help companies to acquire their raw, unfiltered version of their brand and broker in some of the best domains on the planet. So check it out at MediaOptions.com. Check out my site, chriszuiker.com/podcast, if you want to hear some other good stories in the domain world, negotiating, just my journey in the domain space. But back to the story. So this owner they started off their company with the domain name and the brand userengage.com. And they ended up acquiring the domain user.com, but it was after a 10-month negotiation. Now he does an interview on Names Pros. James Isles does a great job laying out some good, really good interviews. So he shares his story with some little snippets in there. 10 months. Now the domain, the first one they reached out was $700,000. They ended up getting it for $150,000, which I think is an absolute steal. You know, domains are assets. And user, right? I mean, user is used everywhere. It's used everywhere. I think they probably got that for maybe a third of the value, the market value. I think they got a phenomenal deal, and it's an asset. Now, one other interesting point is that they knew they always wanted it. It was like, this is something we want. They never thought they could acquire it. Never thought they had the means to acquire it, and they weren't familiar with domain names. So when that first came along, they're saying, hey, it's $150,000. Gosh, it seems like a lot of money. But the reality is it's not, right? It's not because of the clarity, the efficiency, and the momentum that domain name gives to their brand, and it just makes it an effortless path, which then translates over to marketing, translates to branding, translates to positioning, translates to the thing we call brand equity, which brings loyalty, and you go down the line. But in and of itself, a domain name is an asset. And so if that asset, they just turned around, decided to rebrand and sold that asset, I mean, easily that could go in the $350,000 to $500,000 range, I would think, right? I would think in the perfect scenario, the perfect situation, that has a lot of room to move and a lot of room to sell that. So very good story. One other last point here is that he shares with his journey with his investors, and investors encouraged him and encouraged them to get the domain name. They had funding, I think it was like $2.3 million. So they had some money. They had some money set aside. Now, obviously, that has to cover a lot of things, not just a domain name. But they did have some funding, and they had investors that backed them up. And what we're seeing is that this trend, when you look at the social, when you look at the technological and the economical side of it, we're seeing that, and more investors are getting that. Okay, so from a social standpoint, there's this wind that's saying that founders and CMOs and these successful startups, they're realizing that they want to own their brand. They have to own their brand. Okay, they've done it before. It's helped them get great exits, and so that they're willing to acquire that. Okay, so they look at the supply and demand curve. That there's momentum behind it. Economical, there's money coming into it. Okay, so these investors are saying, you know what? It's a good investment, because if nothing else, guess what? We can sell it, right? It can be sold again to recuperate some of the costs. And then thirdly, from a technological standpoint, most domain names they're locked away, they're being taken. You look at like a lookout.com. I came across that site today. Awesome brand, awesome domain name. They raised like $238 million. They own lookout.com, security website. Most of them are taken. Like, they're never going to be sold again. I talked about this in another post I did last week about brand equity, that, hey, if you own this domain, what would you sell it for? So someone came to them today and said, listen, you only paid $150,000 for this domain name. I'll give you $300,000 for it. I guarantee you the founders would say, are you kidding me? Like, there's no way. This is like integral to our business. The equity that's there is worth so much more than you would give me. That's how you can tell that it is an asset. Hope you enjoyed this story. Reach out to me if you got any questions in the domain world, valuation, you're looking to acquire a domain name, and I found any value in this, share it up.